Have the other corporate overlords been bothering you lately? Perhaps it's time for the coup. Not every tabletop game needs to have an excessive length. They can't all be Twilight Imperium or Diplomacy. Yet somehow, the popular consciousness would have us believe that length denotes depth. This isn't always the case. Strategy and tactics can be included in even the slightest gaming experiences. In fact, an entire genre has sprung up dedicated to short, elegant gameplay that still challenges the player's minds. They're often called microgames. Few modern companies have been more successful at marketing microgames than Indie Boards and Cards, the creators of the famed Resistance series. If you've never played the Resistance, you should, but that's a review for another time. What you really need to know is that it's a party game that takes place inside a cyberpunk science fiction universe where massive corporations are dominating the people. In that game, players take on the role of rebels who are fighting against the oppressive government. But in the Coup, players are the mega corporations that are rigging the game for themselves. Each player is a powerful leader with influence over certain bureaucrats in the court. Your goal is to destroy the influence of the other players and take the power for yourself. This is done inside of a rules context that can be learned almost instantaneously and can be played in less than 15 minutes. That makes the Coup one of the most satisfying games to play when you only have a short period of time. It's great for those moments when you want to get a game in before bed, or when you're waiting for that one player who's always late to your game night. But before we get to my final opinion of the game, let's take a look at what's inside the box and how the game plays. So as we pop open this box, we're going to find just a few components. There's not a whole lot in here, although they are pretty high quality. The first thing is this bag of tokens. These basically represent the amount of influence that you're acquiring throughout the game, and then you can spend them to make your opponents lose influence. That will come into become a little bit more important later as I discuss the rules. Next up, we've got your cards, and in here you can see how beautiful they are. They're really gorgeous. They're a little out of focus, but I apologize for that. But you've got the Ambassador, you've got the Duke, you've got the Contessa. There's a lot of different, there's 5 different classes that you can have sway over, and they'll help you in different ways. I also have an extra card in here, whoops. And then these are kind of nice. They're little cheat sheets. They are basically rundowns of how the rules work for everybody at the table. So you can look and see what all the available actions are to you based on whether or not you have a certain character or whether it's just a basic action that anybody can do. These are really nice, a nice little piece of rules that make everything a lot easier. You can really put this in front of somebody and they'll know exactly what to do. You don't have to really tell them the rules of the game at all. And then finally, of course, we have our rule book. It's very tiny, very thin, not a whole lot going on in here. There is some intricacy that you might need to learn, but really if one person reads through this, then everybody's going to know what they're doing. At the beginning of the game, each player is given 2 tokens and 2 influence cards. These can be seen by you, obviously, but you should definitely not let other people know who it is that you are conspiring with in your group. Ultimately, your goal is to get 7 tokens that will allow you to induce a coup onto one of your opponent's influence cards, and they'll have to get rid of it for the rest of the game. However, there's lots of different factors that can change the way that this plays out. There's different actions that you can take based on the cards you have. And you also have actions that anybody can take. So you can do what's called an income and take 1 coin, or you can do what's referred to as foreign aid and take 2 coins. Now, you might be asking why you wouldn't take 2 coins every time. That's because there are certain cards out in the board that can keep you from doing that. So it's not always the safest bet, and sometimes it's just impossible to do if somebody keeps blocking you over and over and over again. The influence cards, however, are really what's going to affect the strategy and the dynamics of the game. The flow can really change depending on the combinations that you have. For example, the captain can steal 2 coins from another player. Basically what that does is give you 2 influence while ridding it from somebody else, so you're really getting an advantage over another player. This card can also block stealing, so basically you can't have another captain doing the same thing to you, going back and forth throughout the rounds. The ambassador also blocks stealing, but it doesn't feel like a terribly offensive or defensive card. This is really a placeholder, because at any time you can exchange this card with another one in the deck. Later on, we're going to talk about how you can sort of be deceptive and lie about which characters you're playing. The ambassador is great for that, because one moment you can be talking about how you're using your duke, and then you'll switch this one out and maybe you'll actually grab a duke or a different class. It really is very versatile in its uses. The assassin can be truly devastating because the player only has to use 3 of his coins to get rid of another player's influence card. Tensions really mount when someone announces that they have an assassin card, because it could mean that the game could be over in a split second as soon as they grab 3 coins. The Duke is for the player that wants to be economically powerful, because he is the only card that can take 3 coins from the treasury at any given time. This is also the card that you use to block that foreign aid, where you can grab 2 coins. This is probably the most outwardly powerful card in the deck. However, because he doesn't have any defensive powers against stealing or against assassination, he's very vulnerable to attack. Finally, we have the Contessa, whose only ability is to block assassination. But when you have somebody else at the table with an assassin, this is one of the most valuable cards that you can have. These cards mingle and interact with each other in a lot of really cool ways. But what makes the Coup so special is that you don't necessarily have to be telling the truth about which cards you have in your hand. In order to get a few more coins, you could say that you have the Duke when you really don't. In order to destroy your opponents faster, you could say you have the Assassin, even if you don't. However, this is a particularly dangerous strategy because other players can call you on your bluff, and if you're in fact lying, you immediately lose that influence card. If you're telling the truth, they lose their own influence cards. So in some ways, it can be beneficial to act a little shady, even if you're telling the truth. This transforms a game of strategy into a game of deduction, making the Coup feel really unique and adding a new layer of fun to the experience. Once you've managed to remove the influence of every other player at the table, you can claim victory. Ultimately, it's surprising just how much depth and strategy are packed into this little box. The mechanics are so simple that in the beginning, they almost seem inconsequential, but the more you play, the more you realize that there are tons of options that are not really seen on face value. A lot of players forget that in the Coup, they can legally lie and cheat their way to a win, and that's unfortunate because some of the most fun moments I had playing this game was catching someone in a bluff or getting away with one myself. After all, this is a game about politics, a schemer's paradise. It really is entertaining trying out different combinations of bureaucrats to see if you can get yourself a victory. And hey, even if you lose, you're going to have time to play another game. The components are very well made, if a little sparse. There's really not a whole lot inside of here, but that's nice because there's less things to lose. You're also going to find that a lot of people are going to comment about the art. This game is truly stunning to look at. There aren't very many different images, but the ones that are here are really beautiful. The only real complaint I have about the Coup is that its theme doesn't come across quite as well as the Resistance's did. In the Resistance, it really feels like you're trying to figure out who the spy is amongst you, because that's exactly what you're doing. But in the Coup, you don't really feel that kind of influence over people of import. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of abstractions, and hell, you basically have to pay to defeat your enemies. But that doesn't mean this game isn't fun, because it really, really is. The only problem is that it wasn't quite as immersive as I was expecting it to be. I'm also afraid there aren't quite enough options. There's only 5 bureaucrat cards, which, while they can be combined in lots of different ways, eventually you do hit a ceiling. I don't feel like my gaming group has gotten there quite yet, but I do worry that there's a point in the Coup where you've basically seen and done everything that you can do, and it stops being replayable. That's just a theory at this point, but I do think that a few extra bureaucrat cards could help this stay at the table a little bit longer. Regardless, if you're looking for a fun, fast, strategic good time, you really couldn't do much better than the Coup. This game can get really competitive and it can test the boundaries of your mind to a point that many other party games don't. If there's one micro game you should own, it's probably the Coup. We're giving it a 9 out of 10. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this episode of Hit the Table, and I really hope that this was informative. This is one of my favorite games of the last few years, and I think you're going to have a ball with it if you decide to pick it up. We know we've been gone for a little while now. We haven't produced many episodes of really anything on our YouTube channel. It's just been a really rough month, so we're hoping that we can kind of pick up the bootstraps and go forward with some new content for you in the near future. We've got some people producing content for us that never have before. Julian, who's a good friend of mine, recently did a review of Shadow of Mordor, and he's going to be doing some more stuff here and on the website, from what I understand. For that reason, you should definitely check out jetpackjoust.com. You should head to our Facebook page, to our Twitter page, to our Steam Curator page. We're all over the place. However you want to communicate with us, we will be there. We're really happy to do that. So comment down below, like the video, subscribe, share it with your friends if you think they're going to like this game. That's going to help us out a lot. And we just want to keep bringing you as much great gaming content as we can. So until next time, a Bill Murray.